Hey, what's up, guys? I just figured I'd kind of go over the build process of this thing and kind of show you a few things that I forgot to mention in my first video. So real quick, I just want to go over this one thing that I missed in here. You notice there's a bump up in the floor right there. That was because my dinette was just too tall. Your feet would just dangle. And I had 6'11" inside to work with, so I just made a 5-inch base here so you could actually touch the ground, and I figured 6'4" is still a pretty good height in here. So this just ended up being storage under here for camp chairs and stuff. You know, they can tuck up under here, and there's also some space to tuck that way, so it works out good. It's like you know, 4 and 4 1/4 inches, you know, so it works good for small stuff. You could put like some, you know, like a cast iron pan in there or something like that if you want to, because they're so damn heavy, the weight will keep low. Yeah, and I kind of want to just go over the build process of how I built this thing, you know, kind of in the sequence of how it was built. Obviously, the first thing I started with was this adjustable base on casters so I could build on a level platform, but obviously built the base first. The base is, I ripped down 2x4s to 3 inches so I could do 2 layers of 1.5 inch foam. So I got 3 inches of foam in the for the base. You know, it's super rigid, and I got 3/8 plywood on the top and 1/4 inch on the bottom. So the base I kind of overbuilt. I think it's a little, it's a little bit of overkill. On the very bottom of it, I put, God, at that point I was just looking for stuff in my shop that I could use as like a base, you know, something that when I slid in my truck, you know, if it hit something, it wouldn't, you know, it would be nice and durable on the bottom. So I had some ironwood laying around. That's a really, really dense, you know, wood they use for decking. So I cut a few strips and kind of put it on the bottom. So the base is super heavy, but that's really the only thing that kind of was, I would have kind of redo. I wouldn't have built it that rigid, but anyways, it worked out. But the next two things I built were the back, you know, minus the, you know, storage units that bump out. I built the whole back wall, framed it, insulated it, and sheathed it, glued it, screwed it. So it was essentially, you know, just like a big truss, right? And then I did this section here. I built this, you know, up to here. Same deal, framed it, glued it, screwed it, 1.5 inch. Insulation, that dense pink stuff. So I had a back and the front built. That way I could, you know, screw the sides on. Then I built the sides. I built both sides entirely, you know, so they were built, glued, some screws, not many. I didn't really need too much of a mechanical bond because the adhesive that I used, I'll show you later, is just very aggressive and it just bonds very well. And then I just I screwed through here with big 4-inch leg bolts with like a big pan head on them. They're like ledger lock screws that you use for securing a ledger to a house structure when you're building a deck. 4-inch ledger locks, like, no, I think I have 4 in here. And then on the back side, since the wall was all the way up, you can kind of see some indentations maybe where they are, but I did a pretty decent job of filling the holes. But every 10 inches or so, I'd put a 4-inch leg through this into the back wall, and it's just, this thing is extremely strong. So once I had the sides on, then I could put the kind of little wing wall right here. Then I could screw these in and they'd screw right into the wall. So everything is just super rigid. And then the roof, I did, I ripped 2x4s down to 3 1/4. and then I slightly tapered them to the end. So they're 3/4 inch in the middle, and then they go down to 3 inches on either edge. So there's a 1/4 inch taper from the center to the end on each side on all the roof trusses. So it created a little bit of a, fall off for water to, eventually find its way to the edge of the camper. Now, the one in the back here, I did make a little bit taller so the water doesn't come over the, back over the porch area. But I just really wanted to build this. All the campers that I see the water just gets right up to the door. And that's one of the weak points on these things. This water gets into the door jam. So I really wanted to have a little porch, and I think that sticks over about 20 inches or so. So 18 or 20 inches of overhang. So it's kind of nice to have that. So, in the style, this is how I built my wall construction. So on the inside, it's 1/8 inch Luan. So I built the walls, put on the 1/8 inch Luan with, I used this for the adhesive for that, the Sikaflex construction adhesive. Awesome stuff. That stuff is very aggressive, and it also stretches, so these things get a lot of movement, but I have a feeling it's not going to move that much at all, to be honest with you. So once I had the inside wall installed and the panel on, then I cut these down to size, and I then use these with this stuff. It's a subfloor adhesive that's made by Advantech. You can see it right there. I tried about 4 or 5 different brands of kind of this foam style adhesive. This isn't really a traditional foam. It dries as it cures like a gel, so it doesn't stay in that foam state, but it goes a lot longer than a tube of caulk. And I really wanted to, get a lot of this surface area on here. I didn't want to use caulk because I wanted a full bead, not just like what you get from a tube of caulk, like a 1/4 inch or a 3/8 strip. This stuff, you can really lay it on and almost cover that whole sheet of XPS foam. So once I had this all cut out, I cut out my foam, made it as tight as I could, and then I used weights to put on the foam to secure it to this. And then once that was all done, then I flipped the walls over and I put on my 1/4 inch. This is a 1/4 inch AC ply right here. And the first thing I did is I just laid it all down. I left the corners long everywhere, and then I went over it, the whole thing, after I was done, and just, used a router cutoff wheel and just went around the whole thing and just cut it off with a router, so it was just perfect. And that worked out pretty good. So, and I just ripped down, this is 1 inch wide, by 1.5 inches here, the same thickness as the XPS. And so far, this is kind of the first go around that I've done, but this thing is really strong. 1 inch was a pretty good, I probably could have even gone with just a 1 inch wall right here, just probably didn't need 1.5 inches, but if I do another one, I might just try to do it with inch. I don't know. I think it was a little bit of overkill, but anyways, I think it's R7, for this 1.5 inches. So that's pretty decent insulation value for a little camper. I mean, my windows are 24 by 16, the 2 windows I put in. So, and they're just single pane, so I'm losing a little bit of R value there, but for the most part, it's, we've gone out in a few times and it stays really warm inside. So my wall construction here, this is just, I designed this to where, the front of the cab was 62 inches. It hanged over because I want to put in a queen size bed. So right here at the 4 foot mark, from here to here, 4 feet, I just put a stud so I could so I could do 4 feet here, and the full sheet of plywood, I want 4 feet at least to pick up this overhang, and 4 feet into the main structure. So this thing was essentially, and I'd staggered the inside plywood wall the exact same as the outside plywood wall. I didn't stagger anything. I designed them the exact same from the inside to the outside. So you were picking up 4 feet of that plywood here and 4 feet in the main body of the camper. So, and here's this board here, right here was I did actually use a full 2x4 here. And I think it was a 10-footer from here to the very end. So I could pick up some, you know, some cantilever, pick up some strength, you know, and it's just super strong. So, you know, if you guys got any questions, you know, these are the adhesives that I used. The only 3 in this whole thing that I used. Titebond mainly for like interior stuff, cabinets. Once that dries, it usually takes a full 24 hours to fully cure, but that's just like wood. You try and rip joints apart and it just tears the wood apart. And this is that Advantech subfloor adhesive I was telling you about. It bonds really well with the styrofoam. It says it's not a God, what's the word? It's supposed to almost burn solvent. It's solvent based, but for some reason I did multiple tests on the XPS and it did not melt it, which I was very surprised. And it is an extremely aggressive bond to that XPS. And this, thought I had a piece of it over here. Maybe I don't. Yeah, anyways, this is the stuff I use for the body of it. This is called a Geico deck. It's great stuff. You can lay it on as thick as you want, build up a good, you know, I don't know how many mils I got on there, but it's a pretty thick coat. You know, I went down, I got a few scratches on it, you know, from tight trails, and it did not come off. It just scratched it up a little bit, and if you don't like the scratches, you can just throw a little bit more on there. So that's kind of nice about that. Anyways, guys, if you guys got any more questions, just let me know. Hit me up in the comments. But if not, I'll catch you guys on the next one.